This week, the BC Legislature is back in session, and with that, we've had 3 brand new polls to discuss. So what I'm going to do here is fill this with a lot of numbers, and so we can understand what the current BC political situation is like right now. So we've had 3 polls done in this last week. One is by Cardinal Research, which is a relatively new pollster, but also has been relatively reliable. Research Co. is a tested and tried and true BC pollster. They have been accurate in the last election. I would say of the 3, they're the most reputable. And then we also have this Bagel polling poll, which is not as reliable as it has a small sample of about 150 participants, and it was distributed through social media. But it was actually like a full questionnaire on social media. It was only a link to it, so it wasn't just like a random poll. So I thought it would be interesting to include that poll. So let's start off with the Cardinal Research poll. So I'm just gonna, all the ones that are under the last election results, I'll put in red, and then I'll put in blue each results that are higher than that party's last election result. So the last election results would be the NDP got 45% of the vote, the Conservative Party got 43% of the vote, the Greens got 8%, and other would have 3%. So I'll try to remember that, 45, 43. So for the NDP, we have 43% in this first new poll, so that would be down 2 points since their last election. And then we have the Conservatives at 41%, which would also be down 2 points. Sorry, that was my mistake on the first one. So they're at 43, the Conservatives are at 41. And then we have the Greens, which got 10%, which is 2 higher than they got in the last election, because they got 8% in the last election. So maybe that's good for the new leader, Emily Lowen. And then we have 1BC, which is at 4% in this Cardinal Research poll, which is very high. And then we have Centre BC, which did not get any results in this Cardinal Research poll. And then we have others, which have 3, which is the same as what they got last election, so we'll just leave that at 3 with blue. Okay, so that poll has a lot more support going to the smaller parties, and the 2 main big parties, the NDP and the NDP and the Conservative Party of BC, are bleeding support to all of these parties. The NDP on the left flank to the Greens, and the Conservatives on the right flank to 1BC and other, which I presume a bunch of other comes from Centre BC, because Centre BC was not on the question, on the survey. And then we have a Research Co poll, so that is very reputable. They show the NDP at 44%. So, sorry, that was messy. 44% for the NDP would be down 1 point from the 2024 election, where they got 45%. This showed the Conservatives also at a 38%, which is down 5% from the last election. And then it showed the Greens at 12%. So 12% would be up 4 points for the Greens, which is very good. Oh, sorry, I just realized I wrote 2 here. That was supposed to be a 10. And then we have 1BC in this Research Co poll, which got 1%. Which is up, because of course they were our new poll since the last election, a new party. And then we have the Centre BC party, and they have received 3%. And there is no other in this poll. So this poll also shows a very similar story. The big major parties are losing, bleeding support to the smaller parties. And then lastly, we have Bagel polling. So this is, of course, the online pollster, not as reputable. But they showed the NDP at 41%, which would be down 4 points since the election. And the Conservatives, also in the red, at a dismal 33%. And then it showed the Greens at 8%, up 2. No, sorry, the Greens at 8%, which would be exactly the same as what they got last election. Not up 2. And then we've got 1BC at 16%. And then there's nothing for the Centre BC, and others is at 2%. So we can see from all of these, there's a similar storyline across. NDP, down in all of them. Conservatives, down in all of them. Greens, the same or up in all of the polls. 1BC is up. It's disputed how much, either by in between 1 and 16%. I would say it's probably more like 4%, my guess. And then we have the Centre BC party, which is at 3% according to this poll. The other is a bit higher in this poll, so I suspect some of that might have came from there. And the same in this poll. I don't think people have made up their minds yet that they're voting other in the next election. I think that is, like, as independents, I think that's just because Centre BC was not on the survey question. So overall, the Conservatives, I would say, are down by far the most. Obviously, the numbers show that. I doubt they're as low as 33, but they're probably somewhere in between this range, and that is bad for them. They need to be the government in waiting. The NDP are also down a bit, but it's not catastrophic. They're down by only 1 or 2 points in these polls. This poll, 4 points. The Greens, under their new leader, Emily Lowen, have been gaining some support, it looks like. But also the Greens are always overpolled. Every election, they're polled higher than they actually get in the election. So yeah, 1BC, we've seen them get a lot more support here. I don't know, maybe 16% is because their 1BC support is very much online. I'm not sure. But they obviously have some support. They also have 2 MLAs in the legislature right now, Dallas Brody and Tara Armstrong, who defected from the Conservative Party of BC. Then we have Centre BC, the new Centre Party, I guess, but it's also formed by ex-BC United MLA Karen Kirkpatrick, so I'm not sure if it's totally centre. It's probably centre a little bit to the right, so it would hurt the Conservatives more than the NDP, in my view. And then we have other, which is, there's always some other. So what I did was, because this poll is not from a reputable pollster, and because it was online with a small sample, I canceled this in my calculation. And I took the average of these 2 polls. So when they're apart by 1%, of course, then you would get, when you take the average, 43.5, which rounds up to 44. So I'm just going to see what the average would be. So the NDP would be at 44%. The Conservatives would be, the average is at 40. So they're at 40%. The Greens, the average is 11%. 1BC average is 3%. I'm just circling the averages right now. They're not actually from these polls at all. And then we have Centre BC at 2% average. The reason they're at 2% when all they have in there is 3% is because I also assumed that some of other would be because of Centre BC, because there was nothing there. And then others, the average was 2. So from the average, we see NDP down just 1 point since the last election. Conservatives down 3 points since the last election. There's also a lot of controversy around John Rustad's leadership of the Conservative Party. And then we have the Greens at 11%, which is up 3 points. Emily Lowen, the new leader, appears to be energizing that campaign and the Green Party's cause, especially with the recent BC General Employees Union strike. She's been on the ground with them in Victoria. And then we've won BC at 3%, up 3 from, because of course they were at nothing before. So that's quite something to build up 3% in a brand new party, which, like, there's never been a 1BC party before, of course, provincially or federally. And then there's also Centre BC at 2%. We'll see where they go, with no MLAs in the legislature. And then others at 2%. So this is the current BC political poll outlook. We'll see where those numbers go throughout this fall legislative session. And we'll see what kind of headlines come out of it. Is John Rustad done as leader? Is David Eby going to go for an early election, seeing this opportunity here? Maybe he can secure a strong majority rather than his 1-seat majority right now. We'll have to wait and see. Thanks. Like, share, and subscribe.